Chapter 6, verse 24. Arriving at the train station depot, Old One instructed Deabra to ask for the special, which would allow them some privacy until they reached Long Island, and he could give them a brief lecture on the city and how it operates. Nervously, walking up to the train, she hears a voice, Captain Jatame. "Welcome back, your usual?" The conductor's assistant asked, and Deabra said, "No, give me the special, and I'll take my Katie's with me this time." The assistant said, "I know, since you've been gone, you're unaware of the changes, but Katie's aren't allowed on the train. They are to catch the CT2 and those 3 trains only." Old One quickly tells Deabra, telepathically, offer him 40 Shiba Inus. The conductor looked at Deabra, 500. Deabra promptly said, "No problem." With his head held down, Old One said aloud for the conductor to hear, "Here, you go, Master Jatame, you told me to hold on to this." The conductor looked at Old One still with you? Ain't nothing like a trustworthy Katie. Passing a small pocket-sized computer to Deabra, the conductor tapped it and withdrew the crypto. "Right this way, and I need not remind you this is between us. I will deny everything if you're caught. They're no longer playing after some event in Arizona." Deabra answered, "But of course." They entered the train and closed their compartment doors. As Deabra changed back to herself, she sighed, "Man, that was scary but easy." Old One said, "Wait till we get to the captain's home. I don't know how we will keep this up. Anyways, while we're here, let me give you a rundown of the city." After a minute, the train lifted, hovered over the tracks, and quickly exited the station. Everyone looked out the windows, and to their amazement and awe, a goddess said, "That's beautiful," and Old One said, "To us, minus our friend here," pointing at Dung, "it's like a coral snake, beautiful on the outside, but very poisonous. We're not allowed there unless there's a death sentence waiting for us." Old One looked at the fresh signs posted on the train's wall. "I stand corrected. According to these signs, here, we are now executed on sight. No Katie's are allowed into the bubble because of the so-called viruses we carry." Everyone looked at the signs, and Abooksigun began reading them. It's dated 9 months ago. Abooksigun counted in his mind, "That's how long I've been away from my family." He continued reading, Greater New York, effective immediately. No Katie's are allowed in or within 500 feet of New York, or they can and will be shot on sight. The yellow lines around the perimeter are now in place. If security sees your Katie's past these points, anyone nearby may shoot on sight, and no damages will be compensated for ignorance. You have been warned. All Katie's are only to catch CT2A, CT2B, and CT3 trains. Anyone caught taking their Katie's on any other trains is fined 2 bitcoins and 2 weeks in jail. 10-1. Abooksigun asked Old One, "What is this 10-1? We've been hearing this ever since we arrived here." Old One said, "It is from the Torah. Our laws here are simple. The 10 commandments minus one of them. Thou shalt not covet." Abooksigun said, "That's crazy." Old One said, "Welcome to New York. That's not half of it. You can do the other 9 in the course desiring something someone has. The thing is, they have everything they want." Abooksigun scratched his head, "So you mean to tell me I'm allowed to kill someone if I want what he got?" Old One said, "Yeep." Abooksigun shook his head as he thought about what Old One had just said. Meanwhile, Old One gives a quick lecture about the city, looking outside the windows. Looking up as far as the eye could see, Abooksigun sees the many sky crafts he has never seen before. Sky craft that resembled buses, cars, and bikes, as they all race at enormous speeds. The rainbow colors of the bubble bounce off the bubble's surface as he follows one of the sky craft, landing on a floating structure that appears to be a hotel or mansion. Old One looked at Abooksigun, "I'm not telling you this for my health. Either pay attention, or we might as well get back on that raggedy-ass ship." Abooksigun shook his head, "I'm sorry, this is a lot to swallow." That -1 thing is really something. Old One continued, as I was saying, they call us Katies, short for Wakatilians. Unlike when they used to call the Northern Africans, Arabs, and even Egyptians Anakatas. Not here. If your DNA says you're a Katie, you're a Katie, or to put it in layman's terms, you're simply a nigger. Old One tells them all he knows about New York's rules, laws, and behavior one is expected as a slave. When the train stopped, they exited the train and walked 2 miles. Normally, we call for the bus to pick us up, but that's not going to happen. These slaves here are just too nosy, and it's best we walk. They finally made it to Captain Jatame's home. There were 50 servants and 4 children. The rest were primarily attractive young women who maintained Captain Jatame's property, needs, and their duties included but were not limited to feeding the animals and the house's upkeep. It is a sunny but windy and cool morning, a perfect 74 degrees. 50 or more beautiful sycamore trees are spread throughout Jatame's land, making his former dwelling place a paradise. As the air is so fresh and crisp, Deabra believes it should be a crime to live so lavishly. And no less off of the backs of slaves. Agata asks Old One, I do not know about this place. How can you be sure that we won't be ratted out by the slaves here? Old One quickly replies, we won't be. As I can read your mind and thoughts, I can read theirs. I know everyone here, and they know me. Deabra looks at Old One, and that means what exactly? Old One? We have gotten by the skin of our teeth. It is by God's grace that we have not been caught. Old One let out an annoyed sigh, do not doubt, Deabra. There is no turning back. Now, grow a spine. You are starting to look too much like yourself. As he insults her, Deabra scoffs at the insult. Abooksigun just listened and didn't say a word. Old One stopped and shouted, damn, I forgot about Ms. Essie. We call her Medea, she's the only person who lives in the big house, but sometimes her grandchildren stay here to keep her company. She's harmless but not too much on the spiritual side of things. She's Hindu, Buddhism or something dealing with the universe. You guys stay here while me and Bree think of something to tell her. Deabra transforms back into Captain Jatame. Deabra never called Ms. Essie Medea because of the mistreatment, abuse, and side-eyed looks she often gave her. She thinks about all the abuse as the pair walks up to the house, but Medea opens the door before they arrive. Welcome home, Captain Jatame. She bows her head. Deabra and Old One glance at one another and proceed to enter the home. Medea closes the door behind them both. Deabra glances at the sycamore wood used to build the house and everything in it. Medea walks in front of Deabra and asks, how may I serve you, sir? Deabra thinks about the mistreatment she receives from the old lady, gazing at her, and instantly changes into her usual self. Medea drops like a stone, unconscious from pure shock at seeing Deabra change into herself. Old One is annoyed at Deabra's childishness. Was that absolutely necessary, Deabra? Old One says in a low but sharp tone and demands an answer. Deabra is feeling her ego. She turns to Old One and glances back at the unconscious slave and Old One. With a conniving smile, was it something I said? Or did? She chuckles, you think it was too much for her to handle? Good. She laughs out loud, and her voice echoes. She looks around, surprised to hear herself echo. Deabra's voice reverberates off the walls of Captain Jatame's home. Instantly everything around her goes dark. Deabra immediately turns back to see Old One. His eyes are like a flame, and he has entered her subconscious mind. Hearing the voice of a dead man that Captain Jatame himself killed on the ship. There you are. Tomas's voice plays in Deabra's mind. Deabra looks around in fear. She trembles. No. You're dead. She screams, enraged at Old One for entering a part of her mind she had buried in her subconscious. She snaps at him. Old One? Get out of my head, she demands, but Old One refuses to listen and digs deeper. There you are. There you are, my little darling. My one and only Anna-Katie. Tomas says devilishly and is filled with lust. Deabra drops to her knees, clutching her ears tightly and begging Old One to stop the influx of memories. Please, please, then she screamed as loud as she could, please. She begs Old One, please stop. Stop it, please, she says, terrified. She hears a familiar voice, Deabra. As the sound of boots walking up the stairs, Tomas asks playfully evil. Deabra begins to weep. She shapeshifts into hundreds of different people at once, losing control of her gift. Deabra's screams echo within the hall. The living room fills with sunlight again. You will always be mine. Mind, body, and soul. Hearing the voice of Tomas as it fades away. I am sorry, but I must know who you are. You sounded way too much like Tomas, and I now know why. Deabra catches her breath. She shudders at the mere sight of Tomas inside of her mind. Deabra pulls out of her holster the same .357 genus Magnum used to blow Tomas's head off and aims it at Old One, but immediately dropped it when she sees an image of Tomas standing in front of her. Terrified beyond belief, Deabra screams and backs away quickly from the sight of Tomas being replayed in her mind. The image morphs back into Old One, who kneels to pick up the weapon and puts it away. Deabra, Old One says calmly. Deabra shouts from the top of her lungs. Get away from me. Breathing heavily. Old One stares at Deabra. In the long run, you will become a liability. You have some trauma, girl, that will cause us dearly. Your emotions are not within your control, much like the twins. But you are an even more unique soul than they, aren't you, Deabra Arug-Jatame? Deabra could not even defend the name her father, Captain Jatame, gave her. As Old One continues. Deabra interrupts, that old bastard never cared for me. Just like my sick-as-hell brothers. Sniffing, she moves her back against a wall, he never loved me. All he ever viewed me as, was property. Calling me, Anna-Katie. A special breed of crazy, the Computans called us. She eyes Old One. You are a self-righteous asshole, we all have our demons, but God has not forsaken me. Look in the mirror before you try and help someone when your stupid ass has demons greater than myself. I was forbidden to even exist more than the Wakatilians, let alone love, forbidden to reproduce. James, Captain Jatame, knew Tomas was raping me but did nothing. Because I was nothing to him. Even though I tried my best to be. My mother was not allowed to live once they found out she was pregnant with me. Forbidden. But she escaped 3 months before she was due to give birth to me. She hid among the Isles of California for months. Once I was born, she fought like mad to ensure I lived. That's why the Horseshoe has so many holes in it. She laughs as she reminisces on memories of her mother. We've stayed here too long. She refocuses her mind, steels herself, and stands up as if nothing happened. If you ever do that shit again, I promise you, I will kill you where you stand. As Old One prepares to answer, he thinks to himself. So, much like Captain Jatame and yet reek of Tomas. I will have to keep an eye on you, Deabra. Are you? Ms. Essie moans. Old One and Deabra turn to Ms. Essie as she stumbles across her words. What happened? Ms. Essie says as she stands to her feet. I thought I saw Master Jatame, and then some witch. I thought I saw you change out of form, Master Jatame. Old One helps her stand to her feet. She looks at those standing before her. Old One and Deabra in the form of Captain Jatame, she said, I must be thick in the head or batshit crazy. She walks forward to where Old One and Deabra stood. Deabra, with a sad conscience, looks at Ms. Essie. Medea, you have worked for me for many years, and I have been both ruthless and gentle at times, but I am selling the land to a new owner named Mr. Dung. He and his new slaves are outside waiting for you to clear the house. Here, Take these 10 bitcoins as a sign of my appreciation and reparations for my actions over the years. Go to the ghetto, live like the queen you are, and find peace for your remaining days. Ms. Essie was simultaneously saddened and happy, for she had never seen so much crypto. As she thanked Captain Jatame and ran upstairs to collect her belongings. You're so confusing. Why did you try to kill the woman and then give her so much money? Plus, I told you 1 bitcoin. Deabra said, you and your directives do not weigh with me. When will you learn that your words have no value to me and your directives are meaningless to me? Old One, frustrated, grabs something out of a nearby drawer and leads the way to the slave quarters. Abooksigun is under a tree meditating when Old One approaches. You guys need to stay here until I return. No one comes here until nightfall, but first, I need to see someone who can help us with our plans. A renegade. Throwing Abooksigun an earpiece as he places one in his ear, I look for a famous warrior among us. Please keep this in your ear until I come back. It's a communication device. It is still sunny but a hot afternoon and the slaves are going about their typical day. The shaggedy tiny homes were set in a beautiful field of emerald-colored grass. Abooksigun sits under a tree, heavy-hearted, watching the slaves live their miserable lives. Old One, why is he sitting under that sycamore tree all exposed? Deabra asks. Old One pays Deabra's outburst no heed before saying, old generals need a quiet place to rest their minds and strategize for upcoming battles. Deabra asked, he is supposed to be rallying troops out of this squabble? Old One takes a deep breath and becomes annoyed with Deabra's pestering. Let me go and greet some of the slaves. I know of one, Black and Hound. He would make a good soldier. What have you observed here besides the obvious, Deabra? Deabra replies, I see nothing but weak men. Old One snaps, then stop looking at them. I am sure there are more than weak men here. He looks Deabra in the eyes with anger. Deabra breaks her gaze with Old One and observes the crowds of slaves hustling here and there with bales of cotton and wheat bags on the right side of the fields. To the left, people carried different baskets of fruits, vegetables, and herbs to the taskmaster's hovercraft. Do you think this will work, Old One? But when Deabra turned, Old One had walked off. Old One had gotten sick and tired of Deabra's mental instability and walked off. He hoops on a small hovercraft and heads southwest searching for Black and Hound. A slave with a knack for escaping and breaking men's necks. Old One finds himself in a small barn overrun with chicken and geese. A black man stands afar off, watching Old One walk onto his territory. He was dressed in black cowboy attire with a black sombrero, chewing on a piece of wheat straw hanging out of the corner of the right side of his mouth. Old One stops in his tracks. Black and Hound. I have found favor with Sabaoth, and he has entrusted me with people's minds. Old One calls out. Black and Hound was standing there and saying nothing. Old One decides to take one step forward, but Black and Hound fires a shot at him before he can move, missing his left foot by centimeters. You ought to know me better by now, dead man. My trigger finger is faster than your mind games. Old One shouts, I need your help, Black and Hound. The time for freedom is today. We need men and women and even children willing to fight. Black and Hound has not moved nor taken his eye or his trusted weapon, a .46 timber, off Old One. Black and Hound looks at Old One. Pray tell, where have you found our deliverer, dead man? Old One replies, Black and Hound, he's the son of a king, a ruler. He has returned with us named Abooksigun. He has led us into battles and freed other slaves and ourselves from this captivity. Black and Hound holsters his weapon, shakes his head, and points his left index finger at Old One. See now, that's your problem, dead man. You have been a slave so long that you neither know the difference betwixt what is a slave and what is a captive. I know my place. It's why those sons of a bitches don't bother me. Eager to have him as part of the team, Old One begs, then join us. Help us rid ourselves of these slavers. I already have dead men that have fallen by my hands. Twig snaps, and the tall golden grass starts to sway and move in all directions. In the distance, a large group of men walks up behind Black and Hound. They hid behind the tall grass, and some even exited holes in the ground that led to underground tunnels as Black and Hound brags. These men are battle-tested and ready for war. Old One looks in amazement as Black and Hound continues, "We've been ready. We were buying time. Tell the prince that he has his army." Black and Hound walks over to Old One to meet him eye to eye. Gravel crunches under Black and Hound's feet as his ember eyes, full of rage, meet Old One's. A light breeze blows his long black straight hair in the wind, revealing his black Apache features. "There is something you are not telling me, Old One. Did you and the king's son not travel alone?" Old One responded, "Your Apache mother should have named you Black and Crow. Nothing gets past your eyes." "No, we are not alone. Others will assist us in fighting off our oppressors and Satan's armies." Old One freezes up. He catches a glimpse in time. Black and Hound sees his reactions. Another trick of the mind, dead men? Old One shakes himself. Black and Hound continues, "Please, pray tell, it is about my whoring?" The men standing behind Black and Hound overhear the mockery and break into laughter. Old One looks at him, "We are doing nothing but talking, Black and Hound. Gather your men. I assume you already have plans to take out the taskmasters, yes?" With a smile, Black and Hound replies, "Already done, dead man." One of the men walks up to Old One with the head of a taskmaster bleeding profusely. Old One gags and backs away almost immediately. Black and Hound bellows with laughter. "What is it, dead man, your spine not straight enough?" Black and Hound mocks. Laughter erupts as another man says, "He's become soft and can't hold his liquor." A second man says, "He's a delicate flower. A nice little petunia." Enraged, Old One stands up firmly as one of the men who mocked him, "Oh, look, he's found his spine again," mockingly. Laughter continues. Regretting he ever came. Old One said, "Enough of this gesturing. Meet me at the sycamore tree northwest of Jotam's house. There the king's son will be waiting. And one more thing, the next time you shoot at me, you better kill me. These games you play are getting on my nerves. I would have never come to see you if we didn't have the same agenda." Surprised at his tone and the seriousness of Old One's voice, Black and Hound scratched his head as he noticed a change in Old One's demeanor. Before Old One turned, he said, "Agreed?" Black and Hound raised his eyebrows and said, "Yes, dead man, we have an agreement, but not solid until I meet this Abooksigun fellow. I am sure he is wondering who is leading this uprising." Black and Hound turns away from Old One without a second thought and jumps on his sky craft. "Let's go see this Abooksigun." When they arrived, Black and Hound and his men talked a while about the uprising. Debra is sneakily observing from a distance, although not hidden, as Black and Hound takes notice of her. Old One also turns away and walks back to the slave quarters after Black and Hound and his men depart. Old One sees that Debra is watching. He walks up to her and asks, "What have you heard?" Debra scoffs. "That we have an army. How will this help us with the others who may not want to join, Old One?" Old One shrugged his shoulders as he pointed toward the house. "Let's walk." Debra. 1. I do not question Black and Hound or his method. And secondly, from the looks of things, I believe Black and Hound has it all sorted out, join or die. Abooksigun, Dung, and the twins sat as Black and Hound and his men walked toward them. "Debra, come on now. Let's get this thing started," shouted Dung. "Coming." Debra called back as she sped up towards them, not knowing she was invited. The feeling of being a part of something excited her. "Dead man brings us to a young man whose balls haven't even dropped yet." Black and Hound turns to one of his men, Shadow Walker, speaking in his native Apache tongue. Abooksigun ignored his insults for a moment as they sat. "Dead man, is this the son of a king? Abooksigun looked at Black and Hound. Why do you call Old One, dead man? Black and Hound smiled. Has he not told you his life story? Abooksigun, with a straight face, said in a sharp voice, I cannot work with a man that disrespects and mocks another man's hardship. You are not welcome at my table, for you are not humble and only a bully. And then he spoke in Black and Hound's Apache tongue. Whether my balls have dropped or not, I was called by Sabaoth, so it wouldn't matter if I had no balls. You are dismissed. Then he spoke in English to his men. I have only been here a few hours, and already I have seen disappointments after disappointments. Many of you are self-righteous and have very low self-esteem but swear you are holier than thou. Sick and twisted delusional minds have no place among us. As Black and Hound got up, my ancestors shall guide us to freedom. I don't need your Sabaoth when I have them. Abooksigun smiled. I honor my ancestors just as you do, but my ancestors did not give us powers but knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. If you don't combine those three, you will never understand Sabaoth anyway. Black and Hound stopped and turned to ask, how is it you speak my native tongue but dress like a Blackfoot or something I am not familiar with? Abooksigun smiled, my gift, from my God, that you don't believe in. Some of the men with Black and Hound were curious and spoke to Abooksigun in their language, and Abooksigun spoke back to them. Shadow Walker looked at Black and Hound. Only my people can speak my tongue because it has died out, and we only speak it. There is no way he should be able to speak nor understand Quechuan, Aymara, Guarani, and Nahuatl. I'm staying to learn more. Jokily, Black and Hound said, is there anyone else who wants to stay? And everyone who came with him walked toward Abooksigun and joined his ranks. Black and Hound is humiliated. My brothers can't be my enemy either. What is it you have us to do? Abooksigun said, we just got here today, and we all need some rest. Clear this land of all Anakitas by morning. Old One noted, to the north of Captain Jatam's land, along the fence line, are 3 big houses used for prostitution and gambling. These men plagued this land for years doing the unthinkable with our men and women. Abooksigun said, kill those men and kill any of our people who fight alongside them and bring back the Wakatilian here to find peace and use those homes as your own. And for the love of God, someone, please tell these people they are no longer slaves. It saddened me that they continue with this when they are free. However, we must eat, so they must continue the upkeep, but the food they are gathering is for all of us and no one else. Black and Hound looked at Old One, dead. Excuse me, Old One, I need the details. Walk me to the hovercrafts for details I might need. Old One walked alongside Black and Hound, discussing the details. Before long, Black and Hound and his men jumped on their hovercraft to gather the rest of their men. Hours later, the sun had set, and the Anakitas had all been killed. Black and Hound, Abooksigun, and his crew meet up around a bonfire in the middle of the night. The former slaves are all cheering, singing, and dancing. Black and Hound stands up from the log he sat on. Silence. Be still but for a moment. The music stops. Now that you all are free, let me introduce to you our soon-to-be savior, Abooksigun, son of Wanyenyekevu. The crowd cheers. Now, we have something to ask of you in trade for your freedom. He looks back at Abooksigun. Stand, man. Tell them what you need of them. Abooksigun smiled at the crowd. I am just a servant of Sabaoth. I am no one's savior, but I appreciate the compliment. I need warriors, I need cooks, I need medics, and I need an army for Sabaoth to defeat our enemy. We need to train to do this. I need you all to teach one another, respect one another, love one another, and we shall do this one land at a time. Captain Jatam is dead for those who don't know, and his land has been cleared. Once the sick and wounded are healed, we need to go to the next until all 3 sections on this island are ours, and then we can seek Sabaoth and enlightenment. That is all I want. The people cheered and continued to celebrate.